going beneath the events, headlines, issues, and trends that may affect our marketplace as we take a closer look.
You know, corporate citizenship generally refers to a company's responsibilities toward society. It's a recognition that a business or a corporation has social, cultural, and environmental responsibilities to the community in which it operates, as well as economic and financial ones to its shareholders or immediate stakeholders. If you want to see which companies are the top corporate citizens for 2019, all you need to do is check out Corporate Responsibility Magazine's newly released 20th annual list of the top 100 such companies. Taking a closer look at that with me now is Robbie Locke, Executive Director of 3BL Media, which publishes CR Magazine. Robbie, welcome.
Thank you, Terry. It's great to be here.
Your magazine started this ranking back in 1999. Now, you and I were talking before we hit the air. That's a time when the corporate citizenship concept hadn't really yet taken hold. So why did you think it was important to start this back then versus waiting until that concept became a little bit more mainstream?
So I think the 90s had a different set of circumstances and issues that brought corporate citizenship to the top of people's minds. And I think of the Nike labor supply chain scandal around child labor for making their shoes. I think about the beginning of the Enron scandal, the 5 years or so in which Xerox was falsifying financial information. So the 90s saw these issues shaped around governance and ethics. That was really how they were framed. And so while the circumstances and topics were a little bit different, it was really becoming top of mind for a lot of different stakeholders in the financial sector, and also the public was really becoming aware of some of these issues. So I think the timing of the magazine at that point really helped to illustrate the idea that folks want to see transparency around these issues, and that was where the rankings started to take hold.
So research for this list that your magazine had compiled is conducted by a company called ISS ESG, which is the investment research arm of Institutional Shareholder Services. What exactly are the criteria that gets ranked that you feel underscores good corporate citizenships for the purpose of your list?
So we aim to take a comprehensive look across a corporation's role in society. And so we consider 7 main pillars across environmental, social, and governance practices. And those pillars are employee relations, environment, climate change, financial factors, governance factors, human rights, and also stakeholders in society. So while we can't capture everything, we do feel like that broad look across a company's practices will really help define what it means to be a good corporate citizen.
All right, so 7 main factors considered in your ranking. What's the total possible score a company can get?
So a company could get an absolute score of 100.
Okay, has any company ever achieved that perfect score over the years?
They haven't to date achieved a perfect score, and a big reason for that is while we're pushing companies to be transparent on a host of factors, it's still really important for any individual company to identify what's most material to their business. And if a factor, let's say around waste, might not be material to their business, the effort to gather and publicly report that data may not be worth their time and effort, and therefore may not get them to that perfect score. So I think it's always great to have a high bar, and then we'll encourage companies to keep pushing the envelope.
The ranking uses only information from publicly available sources. I found that interesting. No application or questionnaire for companies to fill out. You think that's what keeps the objectivity in?
I think it's a big driver of objectivity. We want to make sure that anyone, whether it's an investor, an analyst, a consumer, a B2B customer, could see the same information that a research and rating partner is looking at and that we're looking at. And so we also have an objective scoring methodology where companies are given credit for disclosure. And that really is a binary yes, no. You did this and accomplished this. And the other part that drives objectivity is that there are no costs associated with the ranking. There are no fees, whether in terms of how we gather in the information, and companies also have an opportunity to verify all of the information that's been gathered on them for the ranking. There's no cost associated with that. So that really helps to keep the ranking objective across the board.
So is this a pure ranking for ranking's sake, or are you able to extract trends from the research?
We are seeing trends. There are themes to each pillar. There are key factors that we see companies becoming increasingly competitive in terms of their disclosure. And so examples being within employee relations, that a lot of the factors in that category have to do with diversity and inclusion, from reporting data at a board, executive, senior management level to a workforce level, and then also having robust strategies and management approaches to diversity and inclusion. Then there's also questions around risk and opportunity in categories, in pillars like climate change and human rights. And then there's also engaging supply chains and whether or not you have audit programs for the human rights in your supply chain. So I think those kinds of, seeing those trends in terms of topics that companies, no matter your industry, are willing to disclose against and build out robust strategies and management approaches to incorporate into their business is a strong trend line.
Today, companies, Robbie, take this corporate citizenship much more seriously. It's more than just a theory that it may have started out as. So to underscore, do you think your magazine's ranking for the past 20 years has had a hand in bringing this to a real practice for companies versus just a theory?
I do. I'm somewhat biased, but I think that competition and peer pressure has really helped to advance disclosure for environmental and social and governance topics. This has helped to get companies to disclose information that isn't necessarily in a 10K or an annual report. And that's enabled them to see that there are stakeholders out there that are interested in this information, whether it's a data point or an understanding of risk and opportunity. And so not just getting that information out there, but then being able to identify how it becomes core to your business and how it's driving your business is really helping to embed it as more of a day-to-day practice than just a theory.
You only rank Russell 1000 companies. Another thing I found interesting. Why is that? There are a lot more public companies out there.
There are. For us, limiting the scope there is one of the best ways to compare apples to apples. We're already looking at a wide range of corporate practices. And so when it comes to our pillars, particularly governance, stakeholders in society, and financial, we certainly have companies that are doing great work on this that maybe that are headquartered in Europe, or even private companies. But the European standards may make it difficult to compare some of those factors. Private companies don't always have the same interest in disclosing public information publicly. So it's a great way just to compare apples to apples across companies as best as possible.
So we're going to give a little credit here. Owens Corning tops this year's list. What did they score, and what did they score highest in?
So their absolute score for the ranking this year was just over 86. They had a strong show, strong rank across all 7 pillars. In particular, they were number one in the human rights pillar. And that's really a testament to the breadth and scope of their human rights policies. Its applicability to at an enterprise level, to vendors and suppliers, to partners, and their identifying risks when it comes to human rights, their association with public conventions like the UN Guiding Principles on Human Rights. So that's a difficult pillar, particularly for a manufacturing company like Owens Corning, but they really excel there as well as a host of other pillars.
By analyzing the scores and the different pillars that those scores are in, is there a way for you to tell what all of the companies that you rank have in common?
I think there are certain things that stand out, and certainly it starts with all of these companies having very strong year-over-year reporting, and that's key. And it's a really big undertaking inside a company to gather information on greenhouse gas emissions or what your public advocacy is in terms of dollars spent. But these companies all have a commitment to disclose key data points and do so in a way that's comparable year over year. And they're doing so across key factors like water, waste, like their employee benefits and key policies. And so there is increasingly a level playing field when it comes to the good business practices that would be great for a company to help recruit, retain, and really excel in an increasingly competitive global landscape.
We should point out here also that 27 companies are new to this year's ranking. You mentioned year over year results. Which companies were among the biggest gainers year over year?
A few standouts this year were Ford. They came in particularly high year over year, CBRE, and also Dell. They had terrific years. They really advanced their disclosure and performance on a lot of key factors. And I think we'll be looking to see how many of these new companies in the ranking are able to hold on to their spots and continue to disclose against all of these key pillars next year for 2020.
Well, Robbie, we are going to be interested next year to see who makes that top spot, maybe even the top 5, and how that changes from this year. Thanks for joining me here on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Terry. Appreciate your time.
Just want to let my listeners know that they can visit 3blassociation.com to download the complete list of this year's 100 best corporate citizens. Taking a closer look, I'm Terry Ruffalo.